But before we do that, I would like to switch to next panelist, which is Robel Alemu. Hope you're also connected and we can reach out to you. Yes, here you are. We cannot, I don't know if you have a little bit more light in front of you, Robel, so that we could see your face a bit better. It's a bit, if you have like a lamp or something in front of you. If not, we go ahead like that. Robel Alemu, you are a student of medical science at the University of Toronto, but you're also a human rights advocate, and you document human rights violations against the Amhara people, and you also with the Amhara Association of America. We just heard from Senai a few things which are really, I mean, really horrible to listen to, and your main aspect is the lack of accountability. So meaning that all those things that you just said and other things, the mass murders and all those things, nobody's held accountable for that. Can you tell us a little bit about your findings and how come that there is no justice, and yeah, maybe you also have some ideas what could be done to change the situation?
Thank you so much for having me. I work closely with Dr. Sen Knight as part of genocide prevention in Ethiopia, in addition to AAA. So I'd be happy to comment a little bit. Just to preface what I'm going to say, 5 minutes is very difficult to cover such a large topic, but I'll just try and give a little bit of an overview, and I hope to maybe get into some of the more nuances in our further discussion later. It should be noted when addressing human rights abuses against the Amhara people, we can actually go back many decades to unpack the earliest crimes and the factors that have led to the genocide that we have seen historically, but currently at present as well. In order to contextualize current events, I think it's important to make a distinction between the last 3 years under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his Prosperity Party, and then the preceding coalition called the EPRDF, which was led by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF. The TPLF was originally a separatist group, but in their 1976 manifesto, they named the Amhara people as their eternal enemies. When they came to power in the early 90s, they changed the administrative boundaries of the country by ethnic lines, expanded their home region of Tigray by annexing historic majority Amhara lands of Walqait and Raya, and they did the same along other inter-regional border areas, which led to systematic ethnic cleansing, and this was effectively legalized with the implementation of a racist constitutional order, which introduced a system of apartheid. The TPLF went on to govern the country for some 27 years between 91 and 2018, which was characterized by many crimes, including genocide against the Amhara, the Oromo, the Somali, the Gambela, and other groups as well. However, it should be noted that after Prime Minister Abiy and his party came to power in 2018, the genocidal massacres actually did not stop, but alarmingly increased in frequency. The intensified genocide over the past 3 years has taken place across the country, targeting Amhara civilians and other ethnic minorities by violent armed groups, including the TPLF, the Oromo Liberation Front, or OLF Shenne, or otherwise known as the Oromo Liberation Army, or OLA, the Gumuz Liberation Front, and the Kimant Liberation Front. It should be noted, all of these groups have close ties with the TPLF, who have readily provided financial, logistical, and other forms of support. And at times, other ethnic minorities are targeted as well. But in addition, some of these groups have been aided by regional officials, especially in the Oromia and Benishangul Gumuz regions, which have been found to be the most hostile regions for ethnic Amharas in Ethiopia. But truth be told, as I said before, we don't have sufficient time to review the long list of massacres, but it's important to note that much of this killing actually took place before the current war in northern Ethiopia. And armed groups have been targeting civilian populations with impunity outside of an actual war scenario. So for example, earlier this year, the Amhara Association of America, or AAA, released a quarterly report entitled Untold Massacres Against Ethnic Amharas in Ethiopia. And they detailed just the atrocities between January and March of 2021. So this does not even go into 2020, 2019, and late 2018. So the AAA actually estimated that since July 2020, more than 1,700 Amharas had been killed and 800,000 were displaced from these ethnically targeted massacres. But what is alarming is that this figure is taken prior to the invasion into Amhara and Afar earlier this summer, and investigative reporting and recently some coverage from international media has highlighted the group's systematic attack against the Amhara people. So when it comes to our investigative reporting and what we're seeing from some Ethiopian media especially, the pattern of the attacks and the profiles are extremely alarming. Dr. Sennight alluded to some of these earlier. So regional security forces vacating from areas, and then the actual violent armed groups entering and then proceeding to perpetrate the massacres against innocent people. And time after time, what's being seen also is evidence of regional officials being complicit along with the security forces. So this is a very concerning matter. And earlier I mentioned the racist constitution, and this is actually one of the underpinnings that's enabled the violence, because these people are rendered essentially without any human rights, and they're actually considered second-class citizens in these regions, where many of them have actually been born and sometimes have been around for generations. So since the early 90s, there has been this system that has rendered these people without rights, and this has actually paved the way for the ethnic cleansing, but this is only one of very many factors. So, for example, if we look at the situation in the north with the TPLF attacking, we can attribute that much of the time to indoctrination, intense propaganda from hate speech medias. And this has also been a very major theme and pattern, which has been seen across many different scenarios, across waves of violence in the Oromia region over 2020 and 2019, when people were massacred in very large waves, partly incited by hate speech from media such as the Oromo Media Network, or OMN, and the Tigray Media House. So there's lots of factors that sort of play into this. And then just in the last few months alone, we've seen very disturbing large-scale massacres in the northern Amhara region perpetrated by the TPLF forces. And people have literally been abandoned by security forces in some instances, and have been targeted by this violent armed group. And we've seen a campaign of systematic destruction of towns, entire towns. And this has actually been a theme even before the war. There was an entire town called Ataye in the southern part of the Amhara region that was essentially obliterated. The entire town was obliterated by militias of the OLA. And this actually didn't even gain much media coverage, if any at all, which was very, very disturbing, because hundreds were killed, and the town was destroyed, looted, burned. And then now the TPLF is also doing something similar in the north with many different towns. There were reports of distribution of lethal injections to villagers, extrajudicial killings, gang rapes, and essentially this has led to a humanitarian disaster. And unfortunately, we don't believe that the Amhara victims of these attacks have been allowed enough attention in the international media and by human rights organizations. So I have more to say, but maybe I'll just leave it there for now.
Yes, thanks a lot, Robel. Yes, of course, we will come back to that. And I can see that you're also supporting more or less what Jeff already said when it comes to the media and how they behave.